1811 4000। यही कंज्यूमर हेल्पलाइन।
Yes, it's 10 p.m. and tonight we're bringing you a rather oily debate to raise fuel prices or not to raise fuel prices. Let's get into our show. The global price of crude oil has hit $133 per barrel from $51 per barrel in 2007. But Indian petrol is up only 35%, diesel up only 46% and kerosene up not at all. Elections are later this year and that means that raising the price of petrol is simply not an option for the government. Today the government said that it's thinking of a petrol cess on income tax. And that brings us to our question of the day. Should we pay the market price for fuel, for all fuels? Type QOTD, space Y for yes, QOTD, space N for no. SMS your answer to 52622. And as you know, you can express an opinion by voting online on ibnlive.com. So why not do that? And joining us tonight, Dipankar Mukherjee, leader of the CPM and someone who really is an authority on petroleum. Right in our Noida studio, Barun Mitra, President, Liberty Institute, and Sriram Khanna, Managing Editor of Consumer Voice. Before we begin our discussion, here's a quick look at what else is making the news tonight. The police file an FIR charging Gujjar leader Kirori Lal Bansla with murder. Protests across Rajasthan and neighbouring states spread.
We strongly fear and apprehend for his well-being.
Arushi's family demands a CBI inquiry into the Arushi Talwar murder case. They say that Father Rajesh Talwar is being framed. The man who led the largest merger in Indian telecom history, Vodafone CEO Arun Sareen, steps down before the end of his 5-year term. And after the earthquake, now floods threaten China. 100,000 people have been evacuated because of rising waters from lakes and rivers blocked by landslides after the Sichuan earthquake. Time now for the top story on Face the Nation. International prices for crude oil are soaring, yet Indian prices are kept artificially depressed. As a result, oil companies face a loss of nearly 200,000 crore rupees this fiscal. The government is now thinking of reducing duties and even imposing a cess on income tax to make up for these huge losses. Vartika Kanoja reports.
The Petroleum Ministry's proposal to hike fuel prices by between 5 and 10 rupees a litre found few takers. So it's now proposing a fuel cess on income tax. This will add to the 3% surcharge taxpayers already shell out.
सर ऐसा कुछ प्रपोजल है कि कुछ इनकम टैक्स पे सेस लगाने का कुछ है?
वो भी बात we discuss so many options available.
तो सेस की भी बात हुई सर इनकम टैक्स?
Yes, they discussed but nothing decided on that.
The international crude prices have doubled since last year due to a supply crunch. In the US, petrol prices have risen 20% over the last year and diesel prices 30%. Retail prices in the UK have trebled this year. Closer home, Indonesia raised fuel prices 29% for the first time in 3 years to cut subsidy costs. In India, petrol prices were hiked by 2 rupees a litre in February, but have otherwise remained largely steady.
Right now, we don't feel the heat very much, but because we are protected by the government, insulated in many ways by the things happening outside India. But the question is, how long the government can afford to protect?
The cess proposal is still to get past the government. Left parties have already reacted strongly.
Immediately, it is ridiculous, and not only ridiculous, this idea I do not know how it came to his brain. He is always thinking how to extract more and more money from the common people.
Asia's demand is expected to increase by nearly 3% this year, which means prices are set to rise further. Will the government now bite the bullet? In New Delhi, Vartika Kanoja.
So now let's get you the initial results of our SMS poll of our question of the day. Should we pay the market price for fuel? What are you telling us at the start of the show? 46% are saying yes, but 54%, a majority, are saying no. On that point, crossfire. Dipankar Mukherjee of the CPM, you were explaining to me earlier today that you are not necessarily opposing a rise in petrol prices. You are opposing, in fact, the government's excise duties and sales tax on petrol. And you feel that if there is a rise in petrol prices, the government should cut the taxes on petrol. Is that right?
No, I was not any time asking for a rise in petrol prices. I was telling that the rise in petrol or diesel prices are totally uncalled for. Right at the present moment, because their tax structuring has to be reviewed, because it is not, the pricing policy is not transparent at all. Right now, if you say in petrol, 15 rupees is taxes, remaining is the oil cost. So the only thing which should be, focused is on how to restructure the taxes and duties and taxation policy. This is number one. Number two, this costing pattern must be very transparent. That is, what is the cost of production of crude oil? What is the cost of production of a refined product like petrol, diesel, LPG, kerosene, etc.? What is the marketing cost? And what profit is the companies, not only the public sector oil marketing companies, the private oil companies, private refineries like Reliance and Essar, they are earning. So there are two parts of the story as it is, you can understand. The public sector oil marketing companies, they are taking certain burden, which the public sector, say ONGC, this crude oil exploration company, they are not. They are getting a lot of profit, but they are sharing it with the consumers. Oil marketing companies also are consuming some of the burden of the high price crude price with the consumers. It is the private sector refineries and private sector this oil exploration companies like Keynes, Reliance and all that, they are not sharing anything with these super profits they are earning because of the international price. They are not sharing that part with the consumers. The point is that, and the second part is, so far as taxation part is concerned, that is too heavily, too high, in the sense in 5-6 years back, 70,000 crores was the total contribution of petroleum sector to the finance ministry. Today, when it is $130, the contribution has gone up to 1,30,000 crores. Now, what is the problem? Why they cannot reduce their taxes and duties to relieve the burden on the public sector oil marketing companies as well as on the consumers?
Okay, that in fact is a valid point, Barun Mitra. The fact is that if the government is going to raise the prices of petrol, why can't it also cut the taxes? Because if it raises prices and keeps taxes and excise duties at the same level, then the government is profiteering on petrol.
The government has always profiteered on petrol. Even today, it's amazing that the United States, which has among the lowest taxes on gasoline or petrol, the petrol price per liter in the United States and India is almost the same. And which is the point that the petrol has always been taxed at a level where the government has made.
But Mr. Chidambaram's point to the left is that if he does not tax the petroleum sector, where are the revenues going to come from for social sector spending, for development funds?
No, forget the social sector spending. Just think of the subsidy burden on the oil sector. Mr. Mukherjee pointed out about 200,000 crore, 2 lakh crore. That might be the amount that the companies might lose out if the oil stays at this current level of $130 per barrel. Of that, you say half is being taken care of by the government as subsidies, right? Which means 100,000 crores. In India, we have 20 crore families. 5 crore could be considered to be BPL, below the poverty line. Are we to imply by any imagination that 5 crore poorest Indian families are consuming about 20,000 rupees per year on their fuel budget? Because that is
so you're saying the subsidy is merely targeting the rich owners of cars?
Subsidy is being completely leaked from kerosene to other fuels. For instance, you talk to anyone who runs petrol or the pumps, the petrol or diesel pumps. 40% of kerosene is estimated to be pilfered through the PDS system into either adulterating diesel or selling it into the market.
No, so what are you saying? Are you agreeing with Mr. Dipankar Mukherjee that in fact if petrol prices are allowed to rise, then the taxes and excise duties on petrol must be cut?
Yes, I completely agree with the first part of Mr. Mukherjee's point. That
he's also making the other point that how are we deciding the price of petrol in the first place?
I have no problem on that either. But just like I said, in the US and India, the prices are at parity, so we could say that this is approximately the current market price. But on the second point, or the other point that he had about what to do with, how to do the social welfare of the poor, I think, and this is where I'll probably disagree, I would like the government to allow the oil companies to charge the market price for all its products. If the poor needs to be protected, then the government can give them cash vouchers to spend it on whatever they want to spend. Because no one in their right mind in India today can say that the poorest family in India spends 20,000 rupees per family per year on fuel.
On fuel. Okay, P.F.S.R.Khanna, let me get the broader economic picture from you. The economists have argued that if you keep prices artificially low, you keep prices of fuel artificially low, demand is then artificially high, there is no incentive for people to use public transport, they keep buying more and more cars, and the demand for petrol remains very high, thereby putting even a greater pressure on supply.
See, we are now counting down towards the general election. No politician wants to lose any votes, especially after the Karnataka result. Those in power are now once bitten, twice shy. And I can see their problem. But at the same time, as a consumer representative, I value the public sector oil companies because they are being able to sell to me at the prices which prevailed last year, while the cost of the input has gone up 3 times.
But you heard that expert there saying, how long is the government going to protect the Indian consumer of fuel? How long is the government going to take this huge loss?
Let me extend my argument. Today's Indian Express newspaper has a picture of a Reliance petrol pump, which is not selling petrol anymore, which is selling mangoes. So it is a very clear thing that the Reliance company, one of the largest petroleum producers and refiners, refuses to sell petrol to me and other consumers in India. And all their petrol pumps have been shut. Because
there is simply no incentive for them to sell petrol in India.
Because they are losing money.
They're losing money.
Now the public sector oil companies are also losing money. Now if they continue to lose money like this, our best friends will be bled to death. So I agree with the gentleman from the left that you have to reduce the taxes in order that the oil companies can get more money.
Right.
And if
That's
you
what he's
have
arguing.
to increase the price, a little price increase is not out of order.
You have to rationalize the tax and excise structure.
The other point I want to say, Sagarika, is you are subsidizing crorpatis in this country by selling them LPG cylinders at subsidized prices. Why should Dhirubhai Ambani, Priti Zinta, and the other film actors and the industrialists and the high top 10% taxpayers be given subsidized gas cylinders? They should be given a full price. I'll charge them more.
But how will you monitor who is rich and who is poor and who will get a higher price?
They stop new connections for 2 days.
Well, let's take a short break at this point, and when we come back, we'll put the question to P.F.S.R. Mukherjee of what the finance minister often says to him, that if he does not tax the petroleum sector, then where are revenues going to come from for development? That continues on Face the Nation when we come back.
It's going to affect us a lot. See, where I was spending about 3,000 per month, I'm going to spend now, I think, 6,000 or 7,000.
The international scenario with the fuel prices increasing, I think it's only fair that India pays a similar price.
Welcome back to Face the Nation. The question we are asking you tonight is, should we pay the market price for fuel? Global crude is surging. It's $133 per barrel. Should Indians now stop being protected by the government, and should they just pay the market price so that the oil companies stop suffering these huge losses and the fiscal deficit is not so huge? Now let's put a question to P.F.S.R. Mukherjee, who is in fact for the first time perhaps on Face the Nation getting agreement from the other two panelists. Mr. P.F.S.R. Mukherjee, the question though is that the supply of fuel is restricted, the demand is growing. Now if you allow prices to rise, you will therefore lower demand, and that will restore the demand-supply balance.
No, I think first point I wanted to get it little more clear. When I started, someone is telling that Mr. Mukherjee has agreed for a price in petrol price. No, I am opposed to any price hike in petrol, diesel, LPG or kerosene. For the simple reason, as I said, this pricing policy is not transparent enough. When you are talking about $130 per barrel, I have made an average. $130 per barrel is the crude price coming from outside. That is 75%. 25% of the crude oil is being supplied by our own companies like ONGC. They are supplying it at a $50 to $60 per barrel. Average price is about $100 per barrel. That comes down to about 25 rupees per liter. Tell me, if that is the 25 rupees is the price of the crude oil, under what justification the price should be 45 rupees per petrol or 36 rupees for diesel? This is because of the tax component. This is one point which you are trying to understand.
That's what we're saying.
That is so. There is no question of justification for the price rise.
No, but the finance minister's response to you, I just want to ask you one question. The finance minister's response to you is that if he does not tax the petroleum sector, he does not get the money for all the various social sector spending, NREGA, loan waiver, all the things that you want the government to do. That's the logic that the finance minister says.
It is too general. Finance minister has other sources for getting his resources. Number one, does the finance minister want us to believe that if in 2001 and 2, 70,000 crores was being taken as revenue from petroleum sector, Hindustan ka khatam ho gaya tha, and today he is getting 1,30,000 crores. This is absolutely wrong to say that because if it increased by 60,000 crores, he has got no other source. I am giving the source. Number one, we are only talking about the public sector oil marketings which are bleeding. What about the private sector oil companies like Reliance and SR? Are they running on losses? Are they not running on super profits? Are they not the fact that their 35% increase was there in the last quarter? Please don't. They are running on super profits.
No, let's have a word from Khanna.
No. Now where do you get the money? What I am trying, the focus should not be on the price. Focus should be on the consumer, how to protect. At this stage of inflation and price rise,
how to protect the consumer.
To talk about a price rise.
But when the left talks about...
One thing I want to show it to you, because nowadays the new economy, this market converts, are overzealous. Now here is an act which is come in the United States of America Senate, 7th of May. Here is an act. Here is an act which is being introduced by Democrat, the Consumer First Energy Act, which says to have a windfall tax on super profits earning companies. If the finance minister wants revenue, let him impose windfall tax on the companies like Reliance.
I am really very happy, and in fact I can't even believe that on this program we have Mr. Dipankar Mukherjee from CPM agreeing with a US policy given the CPM's opposition on the Indo-US nuclear deal.
That will be the only point on which this party agrees with anything from America. But that apart, he's right. We have to cut taxes so that prices can be on a realistic basis.
But can these low prices be sustained? This huge loss.
Prices will not be reduced by cutting taxes. Prices will remain the same. The only thing is that the oil companies will have more surplus so that they can reduce their losses from 2,000 crores to a lower point. The other point is, he is right also. Reliance is making profits by not selling. All the petrol pumps have been closed.
So there is
selling mangoes in petrol pumps.
There is no incentive for a private producer to sell petrol.
Not only that, you just compare the Indian oil companies, the public sector oil companies, which are Navaratnas, among the Navaratnas, are making record losses at a time when the international oil companies are making record profits. Now, if this is the situation when the oil prices are at their peak, how do we expect the Indian oil companies to perform on a corporate grounds, invest, and make the improve the capacity of production so that the consumers demand and supply, there is a balance at some point. Otherwise,
so by keeping prices so low, we are not providing any incentives for private producers to get into petroleum.
Particularly in diesel and kerosene, there is
where we need to increase supply. One last comment from you and then we have to go and break.
It's very important that consumers need to be protected. Inflation is already past 8%, and if petrol prices go up more, inflation will go up further. The poor will have to face the brunt. So he's got a point there. But what is the case? Why are the left parties not asking the finance minister and the petroleum minister to increase the price of LPG for the super rich. Why should Dhirubhai Ambani be subsidized while he's exporting all his oil and making money? And you give him a subsidy which is supposed to be for the poor person? That's the point.
Right, so we have to in fact actually end our discussion here. Dipankar Mukherjee, Barun Mitra, Sriram Khanna, thanks very much indeed for joining us. A debate on whether or not to raise the price of fuel. The government refusing to bite the bullet on that for political reasons. The left saying cut the taxes on fuel. Our two analysts here saying unless you raise prices, you're not going to incentivize private producers to get into petroleum and you're not going to be able to restore demand-supply balance. That's it on this discussion. Still ahead on Face the Nation, the final results of our SMS poll. Stay with us.